5-round main event title bout has been commonplace for a while now. Why it's time to analyze if we still need 5 rounds and how it can save some fighters' careers. Welcome back, bow throwers. This is Throwing Bows. I'm Jose. I'm here with Maria.
Hey, everybody.
And I'm here with John.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
All right. So we had a lot that happened last week. There was Cage Warriors, there was ONE FC, there was LFA, and there was UFC. So if you're just an overall MMA fan, there was a lot to talk about. But
busy, very busy.
Yeah, it was very busy. It was a lot. There was a lot of bread being made, and so rather than just let's talk about one individual things because there was so many organizations having so many fights, we thought let's just take a step back because something was said. And it's kind of starting to gain some traction here. And so we wanted to take a look at something high level. And so what we wanted to look at today was the 5-round main event. Now, don't get this twisted. We're not going into this talking about 5 rounds for a championship fight main event. We're talking about 5 rounds, especially in the UFC, across the board for all main events. And so Kevin Holland was fighting this past weekend. And in his pre-fight interviews, he was talking a lot of shit, which is honestly why we all love him to death. And I hope he gets a fight real soon again because I just want to hear him talk more shit. So he did drop gem, though. Right. He did drop this gem, though. He doesn't like 5-round main events. He was in the main event with Derek Brunson, and he was like, I'm not a fan of these 5-rounders. I really don't want to do that. It's funny because just a couple of weeks before him, another Texas boy that we all also love, in the Black Beast, also expressed that he does not like 5-round main events. Those do not get him excited. So let's go even further. Holland stated, maybe jokingly, that he would just be the king of the 3-rounders if needs be, that he's okay if it means that he doesn't get a title because he doesn't fight 5 rounds. He would rather just fight 3-round fights. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to play our little game of filling in the blank. So, John, Holland and the Black Beast are blank for asking to only be scheduled for 3-rounders.
I think they're funny. I think it's a bit of a throwback to something our favorite trailer park boxer of all time, the king of the 4-rounders, Butterbean, said. But I think they're saying something without saying it, though, is that if you are going to increase my workload by 33%, I need to be paid 33% more. With that being said, we had a saying in the military, you can do with your rank or your bank account can afford you to do. And so when Uncle Dana comes calling, he'll give a favor to, do a favor. So if you kind of rebuff that, that olive branch, so to speak, that could have problems for you if you're not of a certain status on the card. And yeah. I think Holland may have overplayed his hand.
Oof. God, I hope not. Please don't be mad at him, Uncle Dana. We love Kevin Holland. Don't be mad at Big Mouth.
We do. We do. I hope Habib actually does coach him. I think that would be interesting.
That would be very, very interesting. It's funny that you say that, John. So before we jump to Maria, in the post-fight interviews, the name escapes him right now, but there was a fighter on there that when they were asking him, like, did you mind going to 3 rounds? And he was honest because he was just saying, like, listen, I don't like going 3 rounds. If I can get someone out there in the first round, I'm not getting paid by the minute. I'm not getting paid by the hour around here. I'm getting paid a flat rate. And if I go 3 rounds, technically it just broke down my salary even more. So I would rather get in, get out, and make it a short night, and then I could just collect my money as opposed to just going 3 rounds. And so, Maria, Holland and Lewis are blank for wanting 3-rounders only.
I think they're smart for a couple of reasons. And I kind of want to go back because I think it's important for our viewers to understand that Holland didn't just start talking. Like, it's not like, oh, well, I'd rather not have a championship than fight 5 rounds or whatever. Like, he's here to punch people in the face, talk a lot of shit and make money. And if he can do that in 3 rounds, that's what he wants to do. And that's smart. I think that as we're looking at, I mean, just look at the injury list or the injury suspensions of the last 7 events, for example. You've got guys that are, obviously going out, and that's part of the sport. You always know that you're going to have these guys that are going to get injured, have to take some time. You take more damage, whether you win or lose, the more rounds you fight. Excuse me, which means that you are putting your career and your longevity at risk the more rounds you fight. Your body, you can only recover so much. Your body can only do so much. It's just nature. Like, there's no way around it. And so if you can be in a place where you can make your money, you can still put on exciting fights and exciting performances and do it in 15 minutes versus 25, why wouldn't you? I think it's just flat out smart.
Maria, before we move on, did you actually, if you have some notoriety here, you're starting to pick up some traction with writing some articles. Did you actually write an article about Kevin Holland?
It's funny you say that. I actually did write an article about Kevin Holland. And what I was really focused on was this idea after their main event. A lot of the commentators took this approach of, oh man, he's doing all this talking and he's not focused on the fight and he's, fucking up his future and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't recall a single time that Kevin Holland was like, I'm trying to fight this guy, and this guy to get to a title bout in 2021 or 2022. Every time this man has opened his mouth, it's just been about making money. And also, I'm going to be who I am. And this is who I am. This is who I am outside of fighting. So I just did a piece on that because I think we as fans, as pundits, which is kind of the shoe the hat that we're wearing right now, we have to recognize that everybody's motivation is not the same. And going back to our co-host, John, which y'all know I don't like agreeing with, but I do have to agree with him on the point that he made regarding that, in this instance, Lewis and Holland are just saying what everybody else is thinking. It goes one step further because Holland is just saying out loud, I'm okay with doing what all y'all Bamas are doing. Because at the end of the day, there's no way that 500 plus fighters on a roster are all going to be the champion. So y'all can talk all of that every day. Oh, I want a ranked opponent. I'm trying to climb up, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to beat the best to be the best. Y'all all can't be the best. So everybody, the vast majority of the UFC is actually doing what Kevin Holland says he wants to do, but he's just saying it and they're not.
Okay. All right, and we will post links. So if you wanted to see what Maria's writing and you're interested, we'll post some links down below. So then this way, if you're interested, you can go see what she says.
Congratulations.
All right. And so up until 2011, the UFC non-title main events were 3 rounds. And so if the only time you would get a 5-rounder is if you were going into a title fight. But if you were on a main event for a fight night or anything else, they were 3-round events. And then after 2011, Uncle Dana decided he wanted all of his main events to be 5-rounders. And then as recently as December of 2020, Dana was actually starting to figure out how he could make the co-main events on these all cards also be 5-rounders. And so, Maria, I want you to defend the case to make all non-title fights 3-rounders.
I think it's very, very easy. At this point, the UFC has their fighters fight as contractors and not employees of the organization, which means there is no profit sharing. There is no benefit to them in having these longer fights because, as we know, longer fights mean more advertising dollars. They're not seeing any of those advertising dollars. And unless you're talking about doing some type of profit sharing here or covering the expenses of camps, medical, what have you, which again, UFC doesn't do those things. Go ahead.
You touched on it. You would have to change the status in them. They go from independent contractors to being employees. Then
to be more
that
employees.
stirs up a whole nother pot. Yeah, they're probably not ever going to do that.
Listen, there's a whole ass lawsuit around that going on right now that we've touched on before. So the reality is, if you want to stay out of those legal waters and you want to keep a semblance of the reputation that the organization or the promotion has as being like the highest tier, it's probably the right thing to do to switch to 3-round or switch back to 3-round non-title fight main events, because otherwise, Uncle Dana, I know you love Vince McMahon and I know you love that WWE shit, but otherwise you are just becoming Vince McMahon and really taking advantage of these athletes, and it's just not right.
Okay. All right. Well, just a shout out to Vince McMahon there. Okay. I didn't know how we were going to pour that into today's episode, but yeah, here we go. So,
Vinny Mac.
Right. Yeah. If you're taking shots at home, that's 2 for Vinny Mac. Shout out. John, why should all main events be 5-rounders?
Oh man, I'm going to be I can't even begin to be as bad as Maria was last. I'm going to be absolutely worse. I can't defend it unless it's for a strap. It shouldn't be 5 rounds.
I like it.
It just shouldn't be 5 rounds. I just, and a co-main event, absolutely not. I don't think it should be at all. You could change round lengths. You could change how fight rounds are structured. You could go 1 10-minute round and then 1 5-minute round, or 1 5-minute round, 1 10-minute round. How they've done things over in Japan. Mm-hmm. And, it's, I don't know, but I don't think that 5 rounds for all main events is the right answer, because the number is arbitrary to begin with anyway. The number in boxing was arbitrary anyway. It went from 15 to 12. Yeah. So these, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I can't make the defense.
I think that you hit a point. I think that's what we're trying to say is that some folks are saying, oh, well, these 5 rounds, that's just sacred. Like, that's what it's always been. And the truth is no, it hasn't been. The round amount is arbitrary, and boxing used to do 15. They had some deaths. They thought maybe the fights are too long and we should cut it down to 12 for championship fights in particular, because those 3 extra rounds, while yes, they may not seem like a lot, it's a lot of wear and tear on a fighter's body. And
Absolutely.
To your point, I think the word of today is arbitrary. And that's why we're having this discussion, is because it's arbitrary. There is nobody that says it has to be a certain way. And if you're out there thinking that the sanctioning bodies are the ones that are making it, I got news for you. So 2 weekends ago, Cage Fury was in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia to be exact. And the State Athletic Commission for Pennsylvania did something really interesting for their middleweight championship fight, in which they had 4 guaranteed rounds, and then the 5th round was a tiebreaker only scenario. So what it means that going after the 4th, the judges' cards are checked. And before you go into the 5th, if all the judges have it either 4-0 or 3-1, you don't do the 5th round. You pretty much wrap up the fight. You give it to the guy that's winning on the cards in that case, and then you let them go on their merry little way and you let them collect their check. I thought it was pretty interesting. And so I didn't think that the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission was doing this to save some of us from watching 5 boring rounds. Nobody's that nice. Not Zack Snyder, not anybody. Everybody just seems to think that we all can watch 4 hours of things and just
definitely not any regional fight promoter and how long those cards are.
Too soon.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Definitely not that. And so we're going to talk now because I think that the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission is looking at this from a fighter's health perspective. They don't give two shits about the fans having to watch boring 5 round fights. They're saying that there is something that they think is going on with fighter health. And so,
Hmm.
with all of the training injuries and sustained that could get sustained in camps, are 5 rounders grinding MMA fighters down? So, John, take it or leave that. Are too many 5 round main events? Is that stunting some of our fighters' careers?
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
it can. I think it's it's just like anything else. Too much of too much of anything in excess is bound to have some sort of effect on you long term, and it will affect you in areas that you're not even thinking about. Your family, how you deal with your family, your mental stability, your physical well being, and then that's just in the now. But that becomes exponentially worse when you're not fighting anymore. Just look at Matt Hughes, prime example. We can even talk about fighters right now that are having those kinds of issues
Let's not look
if
any
we
further
wanted
than
to.
yeah, no, I mean, let's not
Hmm.
look any further than Diego Sanchez. And I mean, listen, I mean, Chris Lieben, we're all a little worried about you. We appreciate the warrior that you are, but man, you sustained some injuries, some fight injuries in there. So Maria, take it or leave it. Are you will are Is limiting the number of 5 round fights going to help the fighters after the retirement? So when they're done, if they had less wear in the cage, is that going to help them out once they're done with the sport?
1000%. This is a combat sport, which literally means that every single moment that a fighter spends in the cage fighting, their body is sustaining damage. So if you can cut down on the amount of time, they're going to by default sustain less damage. And listen, the physical damage is one thing, but really the main damage, which John again alluded to, is, brain injuries, CTEs. These things, we don't really talk about them in MMA the way that they're talked about in football, but they are very much a real thing. And when you think about a basic fight camp just to prepare for the fight, how much damage they're taking in training for the fight, we know, I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about how many guys have had to pull out of
I
fights because of injuries sustained, during training camps. Of course, there's no one on this earth that could convince me that it would not be a correlation between the long-term effects and the damage and the time that they actually spent in the octagon. If you'll permit me, though, I want to go back really quick on this thing with Pennsylvania doing the 2-2 and then only a fifth if they need it.
It's
I think
it's
that that's
it's 4 rounds guaranteed, fifth for the tiebreaker.
that. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. That they, if there's a tie at 2-2. So I apologize, but yeah, I think that that's actually phenomenal, not just from the perspective of them wanting to take care of fighters' health, and also trying to save us as fans from boring fights. It's actually even better for the fighters when you really think about it and how they approach a fight, because all too often we've gotten together and we've talked about these 5 round fights where there is clearly a round or two that some fighter has taken off during the fight. This is a round where I'm taking a break. This is the round where I do this. And that has become a problem in and of itself, because since fighters don't actually know, because we don't have open scoring in the UFC, whether or not they're taking off rounds, or they can afford to take off a round because they've won rounds, we see people inadvertently basically throwing fights away because they took a round off. So I love that, not just for the health benefit, but for the sanctity of the fights.
Well, it's not in this case, it's not open scoring done by the UFC. They don't go to the state athletic commissions, which have open scoring. And so LFA,
Mm-hmm.
when they do their Kansas promotions and they're inside Kansas, there's open scoring there because the Kansas
Mm-hmm.
Athletics Commission is saying we do open scoring after every round. We will put up what the judges had, so this way the corners know. but I don't think Dana's ever going to Kansas. But who knows?
No.
So yeah, no, I mean, listen, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe you save some guys taking the rounds off. But finally, as UFC fans in particular, like they just keep seeming the UFC to push the envelope with the cards, and they've been asking a lot lately. They've been asking for us to watch the prelims, the early prelims, the prelims, and then the fight card, and you're getting 6 hours of watching something. It starts at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it's not ending till like 1 o'clock in the morning of the next day. And there's 7 cards on the main card, and there's like 3 main events, and it's getting to be a lot. Now, not all the promotions do the same thing or feel the same way. Now, ONE FC, if you got a chance to watch them, they're pretty good about, they just try to throw 6 fights at you and then they want to go home. So, there's something happening in Singapore where they're just like, look, we don't got all day for this. We like gambling and stuff. Let's just do this, make our money, and then we're going to go hit the crap tables or
Right.
something like that. So I appreciate the short ask of my time that ONE FC does. But UFC and ONE FC does. But UFC and Bellator starting a 7-fight main card at 10 p.m., you're asking a lot of people. And as someone who has sat through like the Snyder Cut and the last Avengers movie, I'm getting adult anxiety. I can't do this anymore.
You're shady as shit.
So Maria, how do you feel? Could Bellator and UFC shorten these cards and make only title fights 5-rounders, not only for the fighters, but maybe for their fans as well?
Maybe. I don't think the number of fights is as big of an issue on the time as all of the bullshit fluff, especially the UFC gives us. For example, the last pay-per-view, I remember actually tweeting something out. I was incredibly frustrated that on an event that I had spent $70 for, 25 minutes of the pay-per-view had gone by before the first fighter stepped in a cage. That's ridiculous. And the thing about it is, for the prelims and the early prelims, where you are counting on straight advertising dollars because ESPN's going to get their commercials in, et cetera, I get it. I get you having a lot of breaks and giving us some fluff. But at the point that people are paying for this shit out their pocket, you don't need to give me UFC commercials. I already know what the hell you are. I spent money to watch this. I don't need, the commercial for the in-ring sponsor or, the trailer for a movie. I don't need any of that because at the point that I paid for it, that should be all the advertisement, like it should be done. So yes, to answer your question directly, I think that there could be a benefit. I would love to know that if I watch a main event, regardless of where it is, it's going to start and end in 2 hours or 3 hours because there are only X number of fights on the card. But again, especially with as many fights that don't go the distance, I don't think the problem is the number of fights. It is how the promotion is setting up the broadcast.
Okay. All right. So, John, we're going to wrap up with this. We're both boxing fans. We watch boxing, for a very long time. And you still watch 6-hour-long WrestleMania events where they start at 7 p.m. and then they don't end until 2 a.m. the next day.
Not even going to talk about the Japanese wrestling either. Or the lucha.
Let's not talk about that. So
that's why his wife's always mad at him.
That's true.
Absolutely.
When is too much not a good thing when it comes to a card? Like what is a sweet spot for you?
As someone who has sat at the regional level and walked into weigh-ins and seen a bout order of, let's say, 20 or more fights of various disciplines and just going, I hate my life because I know that this is going to be the drizzling shits. There are going to be runs, and first of all, that by the time the doors open the next night, there are probably going to be 14 of that. But realistically, I think 7. I think
Yeah,
7.
that's
I
a good
think
number.
I think 7 is a sweet spot. I think 10 maybe the max. But I'm going to be honest. I'm surprised that they haven't done it sooner for a couple of different reasons. The per show cost.
Mm-hmm.
You got to fly all these fighters out, depending upon where they are on the card. How many coaches they bring with them. You got to house them. You got to feed them. Now you got to COVID test them.
Mm-hmm.
All these built-in logistical things. I think they would have learned some lessons during the pandemic and just streamlined the operation. I wouldn't be shocked if they don't do like one of the above mentioned promotions and start pre-taping their stuff. Won't mention anybody, just see if anybody picks up on it. Ha ha.
All right, okay. Before we wrap, who are you? Like that was wow. Like you did some research up for this episode today, sir. Like my hat's off to you, sir. You know
I
what?
have moments.
Sometimes you just walk up in here and you're like, all right, bitches, I'm ready to tape. But today okay. All right. We're gonna give that to you. All right, guys. So that's how we feel about current MMA 5 round policy. Thanks for tuning in. Please like our work below. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and John actually did some research for today's one. So you should definitely like our work. Subscribe
Son
to
of a
the channel. Subscribe to the channel. There should be a ringing bell, and so subscribe to it. Leave a comment to let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at Bows Throwing. Again, it's at Bows Throwing if you want to discuss anything in the world about MMA. And that's it. And I hope that you like that we did a deeper dive into the 5 rounds. And we'll holler at you guys next time, guys. Peace.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.